Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. In this video we're going to be looking at how to easily set up procedural foliage for our landscape. This is a part of the Build World series, in which we're creating a world. So yeah, like I say, in today's video we're going to set up procedural foliage using our landscape shader. I'll also divulge a little bit into doing this without using this kind of technique we're going to use throughout this series. And so if you're not using masks like we are, then this should work just as well using your material layers. Before we get started though, I do want to point out my throat might sound a little bunged up. Not my throat, but my voice, should I say. This is because, well, a couple of weeks ago I couldn't do a video because I had some sort of problem with throat and I couldn't speak properly. Well, I can't speak anyway normally, but I couldn't speak properly. I sounded all horrible and shit. And then last week I was fine, and then this week, if you're watching this and you're a parent, you'll understand this. But I have two children. A boy and a girl, and they go to school. They come home with bugs that they picked up from their friends and say, here you go, mummy and daddy, there's a bug for all the money you spend on us. So yeah, so I do sound a bit bunged up because I've caught some off my little boy. Okay, so moving on, let's get this foliage stuff on the ground. The first thing we need is our landscape shader. This is our landscape shader that we've been working on throughout the series. We're going to be using our layer stack for this. Essentially in our layer stack, if you've not followed this series along, these are just masks that we've imported from Gaia. As you can see, and this just basically, the white parts are where our foliage are going to spawn and the black parts are not. I've got multiple of these. Obviously I've got a ground secondary. The ground secondary is the same as a ground primary, but just a bit more contrast added. And then I have like a height flow, which is this one. This is red, don't ask me why. And this is just using the flow, like in between all the mountains here, you have a flow set up. So essentially anyway, we're just using these masks. If you haven't got a layer stack set up, then you could use your material layers. As you can see here, I've got landscape paint layers, which is my layer blend node, and I'm using these reroute declaration nodes, which are coming from my material layers. Now, doing it this way, what we're going to do, we're going to right click here and do a landscape grass output. And in here we can put in our foliage type or grass types if you like. And essentially what we're going to do with this series is just drag off our ground primary and put it into there, because that's where I want the foliage to spawn. If you're not using this, you cannot use material attributes for the grass output node. As you can see, you can use a height, like a height. You can use height, but I wouldn't recommend that because the contrast is really bad. What I'd recommend is your material layers. Like you may have it set up where you have a material layer that goes into there, and if you set your layer up with the height, like I have height blend, then you'll have a height input. What I would recommend on your layer is exposing your normal, coming out with your normal and using your normal in the grass output type. That's what I would recommend if you're not using the layer stack. Okay, so essentially this node, the grass output type, is telling the landscape where to spawn the foliage, and the input is telling this node where you want the foliage to spawn. So my ground primary, I'm telling this node I want my foliage to spawn on ground primary or whichever layer you want it to, and then this node tells the world where to spawn the foliage. That's essentially what happens. Now if you have it so your grass is growing on your slopes, I'll use my slope main as for argument's sake. you can drag off the normal if you're not using a mask, or drag off the slope main if you're following the series along, and just drag off it and type subtract, get a subtract node, and then you could subtract it from your ground primary and then into the grass output node. And what this will do is when your foliage is spawned on the ground primary, it won't spawn on the slope main. Right, so if you want two material layers to spawn the grass, you can just simply go like this and type add, get an add node, and say you want it on your flow mask. You can just add the flow, or add the normal of your flow layer, or whatever layer you want, and then just plug that into the grass. You don't have to do it that way with the grass output node. You can add another element. You can add as many as you want, and then you could add each normal into whatever output you want, or each mask into there as well. Let's just get rid of these. Just do that. Add one more array. What I'm going to call this is ground primary GP foliage. I only need the one input because essentially what I do, I use the grass output node for grass and plants and maybe pebbles and twigs and all that good stuff. I'll use the grass output node, but for like trees and big rocks and anything else of a large scale that I want to add into my scene, I use what's called a procedural foliage volume. In the next tutorial, I will be showcasing procedural foliage volumes. So look forward to that. If you want to use procedural foliage volumes, then like and subscribe on this channel, and you will get that notification when that tutorial comes out. So I'm going to drag my ground primary into my foliage and hit apply, and that's it. That's all the logic you need to set up. Dead easy. What I need now is a grass type. So I'm going to come to my content draw. I'm going to come to my build world folder. You can do that if you're not following this series along. You can do this. Put this folder anywhere you want. I'm going to right click in here, new folder, call it foliage. Alright, so I'm going to open this up. I'm going to right click, go to foliage, and you'll see I have an active foliage, which is essentially foliage actor for blueprints. Then you have a landscape grass type, and that's what we're going to use. Then you have a procedural foliage spawner, which is what I've just been talking about, procedural foliage volumes. You may not see that. That means you've not got it enabled in your project settings. But like I say, I'll showcase that in the next tutorial. And then you have a static mesh foliage, where you can just create the static mesh itself. Say you've imported it from outside the engine or whatever like that. This is a static mesh foliage, and that will be used in your active foliage. But like I say, the landscape grass type is what we're looking for. Call this GP-grass. Right, so yeah, that's fine. And then with your landscape grass output node selected, just grab this landscape grass type and put it in there, like that. Hit apply again, and I can come to my world, and now all I need to use is this. So this is your landscape grass type thing, whatever you want to call it. What we have here is a details panel. If you're not seeing that, go to Windows, click details, and this panel will show up. And then you have grass varieties, and you have enable details density scaling. This you can leave this enabled at all times if you want, unless you're making a ridiculously massive open world game and it's got grass on it. You can uncheck this and it'll enable better performance, but you need to sort that out in your grass, in your actors as well. But that's a bit out of the scope of this tutorial, so we'll just leave that checked. 9 times out of 10 you'll leave it enabled anyway. It's not a really big deal unless it's like you're creating Battlefield or something, you know, something stupid like that. It's a shit game. But anyway, for your grass varieties, you can enable an array. I've got one array now. I'm going to briefly go through this array just to go over the parameters. So essentially grass mesh, this is where your grass would go. So if I come to my mega scans, 3D plants, I'm going to check my filter static mesh so they all appear. To do that, you can click on here, this little drop down menu, and click static mesh. Sometimes it takes a while for it to load. As you can see, some of these images are loading slowly but surely. If you can't be bothered waiting, just click on the first one, go to the end, click on your last one, hold the left shift, oh there you go, now they're all appearing, hold left shift and click, and what this does is highlights them all, like so, or you can just press Ctrl and A and it'll highlight them all as well, just like Windows. Then click on your last one and drag it away, and just keep hold of your left mouse button until that appears, like that. Yeah, and then just let go, you'll have move here, copy here, just click away from that. And that should expose them all. But you will get some that are not, but there they go. So yeah, what I've done prior to this, with the new Unreal Engine 5.1, Foliage is now supported with Nanite. So it's highly recommended that you enable Nanite on your Foliage. So what I've done, I've got a grass clump here. You right click it, you can go to Nanite and click Nanite. If you want to enable Nanite on all of them, just do the same thing, Control A, right click, Nanite, enable Nanite for selected. Now I'm going to press this now because I'm not sure if I enabled Nanite on all of them, but I'm going to press it now. So the video may cut and I may just appear back, it depends how long this takes. Right, okay, so as you can see now I'm preparing static meshes, which is good. So some of them I didn't enable Nanite on. What I'll do, I'll cut the video, wait there, no, I may not cut the video. It's going quite quick that, and there you go. Okay, if you're seeing these little stars in the icons, do not worry about that one little bit. All that is indicating is that these particular items have been changed to Nanite and that it's not been saved. As you can see with the new 5.1 version, you've got this 85 unsaved. If you click on it, you get to save what you've changed, and all this is telling me is that I've changed all these to Nanite in the script. So I'm just going to click save, let it save, and now you see all them little stars have gone, which is great. Still saving, still writing on the script in the background, but it's all saved and ready to go. Okay, so my first grass type is going to be a grass clump. So I'm just going to simply click and hold and drag that onto there. This should take effect straight away. Yes, it has. As you can see down here, I've got my grass clumps already on my landscape. Dead easy, dead simple to set up and all that good stuff. Okay, what I want to do now, we've got our grass types enabled and ready to go. If you know all these settings already, then that's great. That's pretty much how you set up procedural foliage in your landscape shader. I'm just going to use the rest of the tutorial now to go over this, maybe add some more arrays and some different foliage and set this up. Okay, so as you know, grass mesh is the mesh you want to use. Like I say, it's there. These are from Quixel. Let's get rid of that because every time I open the content drawer with the foliage there, it slows it down. So under that you have override materials. You can hit the plus and say you have your own foliage material. You can just simply drag that material into there and it'll use that instead of the one that is imported with the mesh. Below that is density, pretty self-explanatory. If I put this to 5, you'll see that my grass is now very sparse. You can see the little clumps here. Well, I'm not sure with YouTube compression, but you can definitely see them there. You should be able to. That's just your density, so I'll set this back to, I'm going to go 550. A decent amount of grass. Below that is use grid. So this is your alignment grid that's in the world. So if I get a cube in here, for instance, like so, you see my cube is here. I increase this and I move up. You'll see that it's jittering as though it's moving up. All that cube is doing is moving along the world grid. Like so, I can move it left and right, and it's just jittering. And it's not jittering or lagging, it's just like I say, it's moving on the world's grid. If I disable the world grid here, you'll see that it doesn't do that now, it just moves and transitions smoothly. So essentially, that's all this is, use grid. It just enables the grass to use the grid. Placement jitter, this is how straight you want it. As you can see, there's random placement on our grass. If I come to placement jitter and put 0, you'll see it's more like a farmland now, where the grass, as you can clearly see there, is just in a straight line. There's no randomization to that placement, as you can see everywhere here. So if you use placement jitter, you just put 1 in there, and you'll see it's now randomly placed in that particular area. Okay, start call distance and end call distance, as you can see there, the distance where instances begin to fade out if using a persistent fade amount material node. 0 disables. What this is, to do the start call distance, you need in your material the persistent fade amount material node. You need that in your foliage material, otherwise you can just leave that set at 10,000. That is completely fine. It's not going to change where your call distance starts. This just reads from your material. At the side of here, you add an override for specific platform or platform groups. So if you click that plus icon, you get a mobile, desktop, Android, and all that good stuff. You can set the call distance up for them particular platforms. You have an end call distance, which is useful in this actual setting. If I go up here, you can see around the outskirts of this foliage group, if you like, or the range at which the foliage can spawn. If I increase this to 20,000, 1, 2, 3, you'll see that that foliage is now all the way over there. Instead of here where it was, it's over there now. So that end call distance is quite useful. Just how far you want your foliage to go out. The more you increase this end call distance, the more performance you're going to be eating at. So I tend to just leave this at 12,000, like so. So don't panic about that. I know you might be thinking, well, you can see the end of the grass. Well, it's not a problem. Once you build up all your trees and your rocks and bushes and all that, it's very rare that you'll see where the grass type ends. Okay, so you have a minimum LOD. At the moment with 5.1, you can enable nanite on your foliage. Minimum LOD is not necessarily important anymore. Before nanite, you had to set up your LODs, and that's basically what LOD type you use, depending on the distance from the camera you are. But like I say, with nanite, you don't need to worry about that. So with scaling, you have uniform, free, and lock X and Y. 9 times out of 10 you'll just use uniform. What this enables, if I go free, the scale X, scale Y and scale Z, this is essentially you just changing the size of the foliage. That's all it is. You can change it on the X axis, the Y axis and the Z axis, and you have a min and max. So say you have 1 and then 2 in here, you're changing that static mesh in between 1 and 2 over that time. Oh shit. 1 and 1. You have lock X and Y, and that means you can just change the scale. I know this is highlighted here, but it doesn't do anything. But with the scale Z, it enables you to change the height of the mesh. I tend to just leave it on uniform, and I can just change scale X. And this is essentially just the whole mesh itself. So if I go 1.2 and 1.8 for instance, and now this is going to change the scale randomly of this grass type in between 1.2 of size and 1.8. You can obviously increase this, maybe you want to put 3 in there, I don't know why, but maybe. And you can see now the size of the grass is massive. So I'll put this back to 1.8, that's about right. And you can just change your density depending on what you want. Like so. Under that you have random rotation. What this does, it randomly rotates the mesh when placed. So if I untick that you'll see all the static meshes are looking at me in the same direction. So random rotation just randomly rotates the mesh as it's placed. Align to surface, this essentially just sits the grass clump or whatever foliage type it is on the surface of the landscape. Even if you don't have that enabled, it does still do a good job of aligning it to the surface. You will, I'm trying to find one, you will find times, let's have a look, here's a good example. You will find times where you can see the bottom of the grass type is above the surface. And some of it is under the surface. All it is doing is using the normals instead. Let's have a look here. You can see a lot of these grass clumps are now under the surface. If I enable align to surface, it tries its best to put all of this on the surface. As you can still, as you can see, you can still get gaps, but from up here, it's hardly noticeable. So yeah, use landscape light map. Forget that, just skip it. Light channels as well. It's the same thing. Don't really do anything, or should I say, I don't particularly know what it does. Light ink channels, maybe that's to do with lighting, environment lighting. Okay, so it froze up a bit then. That's because I've tried adding the sky atmosphere, but I'm using ultra dynamic sky. So yeah, like I say, the landscape light map and the lighting channels, I never really mess with them. I don't know particularly what they do. Anyway, moving on. Receive decals. What this means is that if I have a decal and I want to use it on the surface, if I put a decal down, when receive decal is enabled, the actual static mesh grass type will receive that decal image. When it's unchecked, then only the landscape will receive that decal, the grass won't be affected. That's essentially what receive decals are. Cast dynamic shadows and contact shadows. So your dynamic shadows are the shadows you see on the surface here. If I disable them, you'll see them shadows have gone off the surface of the landscape, but you'll see that your grass has still got dark bits and light bits. If I remove contact shadows, you'll see that the contact shadows for that grass are now removed, but you can do that. You receive all your shadows back, and they work really well nowadays with the shadows. You can obviously disable the shadows if you want more performance, because the shadows of your grass type really eat up at your performance. And when building a large scale environment or game like this, you might want to not use shadows, because shadows cost a lot of memory. Okay, keep instance buffer. Let's have a look. Oh, that's your game overlapping. I won't worry about that. That's just to do with game blueprints, essentially. Instance world position offset disabled distance. This is when using in your material for foliage, if you're using world position offset. This is quite new to 5.1. It's a really good addition. I'm still going to have to explore using it in my next series, which is probably going to be a Build Worlds Volume 2, where I'm going to create a world, but we're going to be using partitions instead of just the whole one. Like now, you can see it's okay, but eventually when I start adding trees and rocks and all that, this is going to really drain the performance, and that's because Unreal Engine is reading this as one big mesh. With partitions, which were introduced in Preview 5.0, that reduces that performance hit because you can work on one cell at a time. But like I say, I'm going to do another series. It might be called Build Worlds Volume 2 if you like, and just showcase partition worlds there. Okay, so that's pretty much all the settings you need to know for that. I'm going to save it. Now I've got a grass type in there. Let's add some more foliage. Essentially, that is it. It's all set up now. I think I am running out of running memory or virtual memory. Let's click play and find out. No, it's just my texture streaming, budget is over. As you can see, I'm getting all these weird artifacts now on my landscape. If you guys know what these weird artifacts are on the landscape, I think personally it's got something to do with the virtual textures, but it may not, because this happens sometimes as well when I'm not using virtual textures. But as you can see, it's just on the one layer. Like so. Anyway, as you can see, texture streaming pool is over its budget. So if I come out of this now, as you can see, look, it's still there now, the artifacts. Very strange. If I come to enter console command at the bottom and press up, you'll see I've got r.streaming.pool size. If I increase this, that'll get rid of them texture streaming issues, but not get rid of this. Okay, I'm going to save this up to now. What I find when I get this kind of issue on my landscape, it only gets worse, but I find if I restart of the engine, it gets rid of it. So I'm going to leave this like this now, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly cut it out the video, and I'm just going to restart my engine. Okay, so now I'm back, and as you can see, that gets rid of the artifacts. It's very strange that it only happens in this particular project. Not any other projects I've got going, and I've got quite a few going for different jobs, but this, it's only this project, so it may be a setting, I don't know. If you recognise that issue and you understand it, then leave it in the comments or reach out to me on Discord and let me know so I can fix it, and thank you. Anyway, moving on. So we've gone through the options here. We've got our grass type foliage. Let's simply click this drop down menu next to the members amount. That's weird. Click that, and we'll just click duplicate. And as you can see, it has duplicated that grass type again. Essentially what we can do is come to our content drawer, and we'll find another foliage type to put in there. I'm going to use this one, the wild grass. I'm just going to simply drag that in there. And now I'm getting that wild grass along with my grass. But if I go down like this, you can see there's loads of that. I'm going to reduce this density to maybe 250. Still too much. 100. 50. It's a little bit better. Yeah. What I can do now, it's dead easy this now from here on in. We can just simply duplicate that one again, and it'll duplicate that grass again, but don't worry, we can change the mesh. Let's add a little colour. We'll drag that mesh into there now. And as you can see now, we're adding some colour variation to our landscape, which is nice. Have we got any other different colours? What's this? We haven't actually. We've only got the lilac colour. I've got some clover here. Let's add some of that in. That's that. I'll just duplicate this again, like so, and we'll just change this to this clover looking one. Let's see what happens here. Okay, as you can see, we're getting some variety now, which is quite good. On our grass. It'd be good if I had a little bit more variation on this foliage. But as you can see, I've not got much of a selection. That looks okay. What's that one? This is the clover. Let's duplicate that again. And then I'm going to add, where is it? So let's see, that one. Mugwort, common mugwort. Add this one in there. There we go. Oh, they're quite large. Looks okay though. I could reduce the size of that, so maybe I'll go to a 1 and a 1.2 maximum, and there you go. It's quite nice. What I'm going to do now is save that. It's quite a good variation of grass. I mean, pretty much the tutorial's done. I'm just adding different grass types. What I want to do now is add a mannequin in. What this mannequin is going to do, it's going to enable us to test the scale. We'll just come to content and type man, and then I've got an ABP mannequin. I'll just drag that in the scene. If you do what I've just done and type man and you're not seeing that mannequin, just come to add here at the top, go to add feature or content pack, click on third person and click add to project. And this will enable the mannequin, and you can use this now for scale. If I zoom in on this character now, yeah, I'm happy with that. It's quite a good scaling for these plants and grass type. So yeah, I'm happy with that. So yeah, that's essentially how you build up foliage onto your landscape. Sorry for the interruption with that artifact before. It does happen from time to time, but it's only on this project. That's what I can't understand. And I've done other projects for jobs and things like that, which are of the same scale, and I never get that issue. It's just this project. So never mind. Okay. So if you found this tutorial without the hiccup useful, and you've learned, you know, something decent, then show your support by subscribing and liking this video. It does go a long way to helping me out and giving me a kick up the bum. But like I said earlier, in the next tutorial, hopefully it runs smoothly, in the next tutorial we will be looking at procedural foliage volumes. And what I use that for, like I said before, is my rocks and my trees and any kind of big sizable assets that I want to apply. With a procedural foliage volume, you get more and more control over how your placement is. But like I say, I'll showcase that in the next tutorial. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.